All right, everybody. Welcome to Jeff Needs Help, or Jeff Needs Sports. Sorry, that's my other podcast. That's a quick plug. This is knee-jerk reaction or knee-jerk analysis, an official Off the Ball Network exclusive. And this is where we take a subject or a topic that is kind of lighting the social media, Twitter, everything on fire, and it's usually off the field stuff. And this week was a pretty easy one. I got a couple guys here from the network. I've got not just a couple guys. I got the guys. I got Chris LeBron, president of the Off the Ball Network. How are you doing today, sir?
Hey, I'm glad to be on with you guys. I know this is a fun topic to talk about right now, so I had to sneak out and chop it up with you guys about this.
Yes, it is. And I've got a one-on-one, a true one-on-one here. I got the vice president, my fellow vice president of Off the Ball Network and host of the Up in Flames podcast. I got Mo. What's up, Mo?
Jeff, when you said you wanted to talk about this is one subject about a certain player that I really care about, so I couldn't miss this one.
Yeah, so here it is. What we're going to talk about today is we're talking about the Justin Fields situation. And I'll kind of give a little background on this. Now, yes, full disclosure before we get started, me and Mo are Ohio State fans. This is not an Ohio State subject. But it is reflecting it because we happen to watch every game that Justin Fields played. So it does factor into it. But this is not a Ohio State apologist. So what it is, and coincidentally, I wrote an article earlier this week and put it up on the network, Off the Ball Network. Everybody go there and check out everybody's work, by the way. And what it was basically I was discussing the steps of the so-called draft experts and what they do every year to create content in between basically February and the April draft. And I kind of went through it step by step. You find a guy that is you want a good player, a famous player, and then you kind of you want a highly rated player in the draft board, and then you come up with something to a negative or a weakness, and then you debate each other about that for a couple months, and then you throw some slander out there, and then you get social media commenting on it for a while, and then now you've got your name out there, and then you say something crazy, and then you take it back and explain it, but now you're debating yourself over something that didn't happen. And we had that happen big time this week. We'll get into it. And then I described the perfect subject is I called it the unicorn for these guys. And that's a talented black quarterback out of a big name school that had a successful career, because that is the most eyeballs that you're going to get. And then you can start throwing out your dog whispers and your comments and everything. And you just light everything on fire for no reason, without the willingness of the subject. It was the main thing. So we're talking about Justin Fields here. He's not making a dime off of this, and they're going to go on ESPN for the next 2 weeks and yell at each other across the table or Fox Sports or wherever. And Justin Fields had no part in it. They didn't call him. They didn't interview him. None of that. He's just a subject. So anyway, that's just the backstory on how this started. So I got Chris and Mo here to kind of break down this process. So 2 days ago, we'll start with Orlovsky. This is the easiest way to start because that's the hottest one right now. Orlovsky goes on McAfee's show and says, I heard, through the grapevine, basically, anonymous source, Justin Fields isn't a great practice player. Doesn't put in the work, right? And we all know that, and so that starts. So obviously the Twitterverse, especially, like there's a billion Ohio State fans. They jump on him, and then he comes out with, I didn't say I said it. I just said that's what I heard. And I want to clarify that I called some people and asked him if it was true in the Ohio State program, and they all said, oh, no, that's definitely not true. So, like, I just want to say that I didn't think it was true. I just said it. And I'm like, well, why'd you say it, And first of all, everybody's letting McAfee off the hook. I know a lot of people love McAfee, and I used to. But he could have stepped in. Like, that was the chance because he asked, Orlovsky says, I heard this. McAfee says, from who, which is cool. He's doing his job just like we would. We do the same thing. We're the same podcasters. We do the same thing. And then when Orlovsky's like, oh, I can't tell you, McAfee throws in, well, it had to be somebody within the Ohio State program. So within 2 minutes, what Twitter Nation has heard, what social media nation has heard, what Overreaction Nation has heard is people in the Ohio State program say Justin Fields isn't a hard worker. That's the message that they put out there. And then now Justin Fields had nothing to do with it, has to defend that. But he can't. I mean, he don't have to defend it, but he has to prove it wrong. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So we'll start. I know that's a lot. I was just giving everybody the backstory because I'm a little wound up today. So you guys will. First of all, let me ask you. Like every year we see this. Do you guys read the article? Obviously, do you agree with me on this false draft cycle that these guys create every year? I will start with you, Chris.
I mean, I feel like a lot of this is just to create just buzz and just create a story that's not real. Like, this is what it's about. It's draft season, smoke screen season. People are going to create stuff, for draft purposes, for teams to, get more, get less. It's just all a bunch of – everyone's working in cahoots with this, it feels like. But we hear this. It happens in the NBA draft. We hear all this crap. Oh, this LaMelo Ball doesn't work hard. I heard the same thing about LaMelo Ball. And then you watch him on the court, and you're like, no, he works hard. You can tell. Like, that's just not because he's skilled. He puts in the time and the work at his craft. And it's kind of similar with Justin Fields with LaMelo. Like, you heard the same stuff. And, me doing a lot of draft stuff, I was like, that to me, that's just teams just trying to throw stuff out so they can get LaMelo at 4 or 5 or wherever they are, let him drop. So that's to me what this is all about. Like, just to, hey, he doesn't practice good. It may be a team that be like, let's get this out. So maybe at 5 or wherever we're picking 6, we could drop. But to me, teams are going to do their homework. They're going to talk to the coaches. We know how the process works. They're going to get their information. It's not going to be from an anonymous source and all that. To me, Orlovsky tends to do stuff like that and all that just to try to get people to get at him. We know how Orlovsky is. He likes to be very, hot takey.
Yes.
He's very Cruz-like. But nah, shout out to Cruz. But
shout out to Cruz.
Yeah, shout out to Cruz. But I don't. It's just nonsense. It really is. It's just typical draft stuff that you get in every draft. And to me, like, to try to downplay what Justin Fields has done, like, we know he puts in the work. Like it's come on, guys. Like, did you see him in against Clemson? Like his teammates were going to dive him. Like they were running through a wall for him, and that starts at practice. Because if he wasn't a good practice player, they wouldn't have cared. They wouldn't have gone all out for him. They played hard for him because they saw how gutsy he was, and then the national championship too. So that's all nonsense.
Yeah, as far as the practice that you touched on it, me and Mo watch it. We're invested, and he pulled that team through a tough season they had with all the the guys out with COVID and all that, and the short season and the canceled games. Like if you watch, like that dude, like rallied his team, and you're right, Chris. They don't play like that. As far as addressing those issues, like they don't play that with a guy like that. And as far as just like, there's no way you could see this guy play for the last 2 years. He had 2 of the best years in college football history. That's just the way it is. I've looked at the numbers, like that's just where they're at. And then you can't see everything they did at Pro Day. He checks every box that you want in a quarterback, that they say you want in a quarterback. And then still he went from, I looked the last mock draft I saw, like one of the NFL mock drafts, having down at 5, the 5th quarterback. Like you can't, there's no justification that a guy that is a can't miss absolute prospect and then goes to the national championship game on his back. And then you're dropping because you're working out in shorts.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't make any sense. So all right, Mo, go ahead, man. I don't even know where to start. You go ahead.
So I know here's what I want to start about with Justin Fields. It's mighty funny. So I think the narrative about Ohio State quarterbacks is, first off, they typically do have black quarterbacks, but that's a whole nother conversation. Ohio State quarterbacks, not
another conversation,
right? But they don't excel in the NFL, and I'll give them. There were certain guys we didn't have expectations for to be great in the NFL. J.T. Barrett,
right?
It was a surprise with Terrell Pryor, but obviously with all that tattoo gate stuff, the scandal, That ruined a year of eligibility. That changed a lot of things. I think Terrell Pryor could have been a fairly good quarterback. He didn't get a fair chance after the fact, but that's besides the point. Cardale Jones, I didn't have like high expectations for Cardale Jones. I did for Braxton Miller, but when he switched to wide receiver, okay, it looked like he could be a good little slot receiver in the NFL. He was so athletic. But outside, there's not like, up until Dwayne Haskins, like we thought Dwayne Haskins was going to be different than what we've seen from every other quarterback because of his true throwing ability in the pocket. He made plays. Obviously, he's a bust, but I don't think it was his talent. I think it was just I think he had a work ethic problem. I don't think he adapted to the NFL life and being a star, being a starter. I just don't think he had it. He still can revive himself. He's been in the league, 3 years? He still has a chance to get with the right organization that's going to take special interest in him and get him right. But then you talk about Justin Fields. And my problem would be if Justin Fields dropped and it was justifiable, then whatever. These guys, Mac Jones, you tell me the last Alabama quarterback that was any type of good in the NFL. Tell me any type of Alabama quarterback I should be looking at to say that they don't have the same perception as Ohio State quarterbacks. The difference, look at Jalen Hurts coming out of Alabama, transferred over to Oklahoma. But when he was at Alabama, we don't see NFL type talent. Tua takes over. Tua comes out of Alabama. Obviously, with his injury, that was the scary part. But then they start picking apart Tua about all the weapons he has, and he's not going to have that. But Mac Jones, nobody talks about. It's crazy that the Heisman winner was an Alabama wide receiver. The next best receiver in college football this year was probably Jalen Waddle.
The two highest rated receivers in the draft. And this isn't shade at Jones. Like this, and it goes to the Fields defense. Like I'll touch on that real quick. A lot of Fields, his biggest thing that they had realistically before this work ethic shit started was he held on to the ball too long. And my argument would be like, yeah, these guys that go to Alabama, Ohio State, we're talking next level talent. Of course, you're going to hold on to the ball because, if you wait another second, you got a 60-yard touchdown. And Fields did that more often than not. Did anybody watch the Clemson game? That's why he held on to the ball. Like his air yards are off the chart. I won't get into the analytics. His air yards are off the chart. Him, Burrow, guys like that. And Mac Jones had one of those seasons. But, like, what do they want these quarterbacks to do? Just check down? Like, nah, man, let Smith go because I want to raise my draft stock. So I'm gonna throw this 7-yard out real quick. Meanwhile, the Heisman Trophy winner is bored. Like,
and college is a little different too. You don't necessarily check down. Like college to me is a little bit different. And the reason why, like teams like Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama, they are so much more talented and superior to other teams that they try things because what? If I turn over the ball trying this, if I hold it because I see in 2 more steps he's going to be open, it doesn't matter. We're going to win the game regardless. Until those juggernauts start playing each other, that's when mistakes really matter. I mean, we see upsets and stuff, but for the most part, Clemson, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, and a guy like Mac Jones, they've been the favorite going into the game, and it's been by like double digits. You don't really expect anybody to be close within them until they play each other. So it's like when you start playing those games, that's when mistakes matter. And we're killing, and not me, but people are killing Justin Fields. 2 games. Yeah. 2 games. Now, forget last year.
No bad games last year.
He's outplayed. No bad games.
No bad games.
He outplayed Trevor Lawrence minus that interception. That one
he's outplayed Trevor Lawrence twice.
He outplayed Trevor Lawrence in the semifinal last year. Obviously, he threw that one interception. That's all people remember.
Yeah, full disclosure, I think Lawrence is the number 1 pick in the draft. I don't want anybody thinking that I'm doing that. But I'm saying
right. I'm not making my case.
Eyeballs.
I'm not making my case for Fields over Lawrence. But what I'm saying is when he played outside of Bama, so I'll give you 3 games, and I'll say Bama, and then, but really what we're talking about is Indiana and Northwestern because Bama was just so good this year.
Let me tell you about something about the
Indiana. He didn't play bad. Like, he really didn't play bad, and they won the game.
They were up 30. They were rolling Indiana because of Justin Fields. He had a bad. I understand that it was a tough quarter, but if you watch, but I could say the same thing. If you just watch the first half, he rolled them. He rolled them. Your defense starts giving up big plays, and yes, he threw some stupid interceptions. But like his worst game, he was rolling still. Like that's his worst game on tape. Now, Northwestern game was tough. He did get confused by his own defense. That's a tough one. It's you can't get around that. They bailed out.
His best receivers didn't play either. Like so, he had
that is a bad
missing
game
2 running backs. Like my thing, we were missing half our offensive line. Like you put
Oh
in
no,
the
there's
Northwestern
reason,
game,
but it's real.
Yeah, put Trevor Lawrence in that same situation. Take 2 of his 3 best receivers, 2 of his 5 best offensive linemen, and take ETN and the next running back out of the game.
Understand?
And you tell me how good Clemson, you know what I'm saying? You tell me how good Clemson does and how great Trevor Lawrence of a game against the best defense in college football.
Right.
Like they were, Indiana and Northwestern were actually 2 of the ranked best defenses in college football. We don't factor that. Clemson didn't play a best defense in college football. Notre Dame wasn't it. The closest was Miami. Miami was the best defense they seen all season. And I'll say Ohio State, they looked bad against Ohio State. Ohio State defense really wasn't that great this year. Mm-hmm. So that was my concern going into the Clemson game. But Trevor, like my thing is Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence. It's been 1A and 1B since they've been in high school.
Yeah, for 6 years.
Coming out of high school, coming into college, in college. Once Justin Fields got to Ohio State, it was who was better out of Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence had the one up because of his freshman year, rolling through Alabama, winning the national championship. He had the one up while Justin Fields was sitting behind in Georgia. But once he got to Ohio State, it was hand in hand. When they played each other the past 2 years, it wasn't no storyline of Ryan Day versus Dabble. It was Justin Fields versus Trevor Lawrence. Yeah. Who's going to get the best of who's going to play better? All eyes were on them. Now, all of a sudden, Justin Fields is the 5th quarterback taken in the draft.
Yeah, like say nothing against Trey Lance, but how does he move up by playing one game to where all he did was run the football for North Dakota State, and he jumps Fields that went to the national championship with broken ribs. And then Chris, I want to get your opinion on a couple of these things that I noticed. Like some new dog whistles that I'm picking up on. Like you guys know how the draft goes. Whether it's we go back probably 10 years of highly drafted black quarterbacks. I mean, Deshaun Watson comes out, Kyler Murray comes out. And now I've noticed, like with Fields, like they're starting to get really creative with the dog whistles. So they can't say like he's a running quarterback anymore because Deshaun Jackson wins it, or Deshaun. Jackson. Lamar Jackson. I apologize, Deshaun. I'm fired up today. But like when they start being successful, and then it starts getting a little more obvious. So what I notice now is like they say, oh, he can't get to his second read. Yeah, he can't get to his, he doesn't go to his second read. He can't read the defense. So now they're getting really like, a little more subtle with it, but they're saying, or when they start bringing up work ethic, I mean, they actually said, this is what, okay, I'll get back to the McAfee, and then I'll get your thoughts on it, Chris, because I'm so mad today. We get to the McAfee Orlovsky conversation. So they both, get on Twitter and they're like, no, we didn't say it. We heard it when we were talking about it, but they still bring up all the stuff. And McAfee even said the phrase first one or last one in, first one out of the building. And then they start discussing that. But nobody said that about Justin Fields. They said it.
Yeah, they threw that out there.
Then they came out and defended it. But I'm like, you're the one that said it. If you why would you put that phrase out there? So now that quote is everywhere. That quote is affiliated with Justin Fields now. And there absolutely nobody said it except McAfee. There's no justification. It's just insane, man. It's just insane. So Chris, what do you think about this new? Okay. I'll ask a couple questions at a time. So, is there any way to say that race at the quarterback position still doesn't matter? Is there any way to possibly act like it doesn't matter anymore? Because it apparently is still there. And I'm not saying this is a 100% black and white thing. I'm not saying that. But there's no way to avoid the issue. What do you think, man? Am I crazy?
No, I mean it's still a thing. It's still a thing in 2021. It's still a thing. Just go back to Lamar Jackson's draft. They picked him apart like crazy. Well, he's run first. He's this, he's this, that. He can't read, right? That seems to be a big thing is, it just happens to be when you bring up, an African-American quarterback.
There you go. It just happens.
They can't go through their progressions, right?
There you go. There's another one.
They they stay on their first read and that's it, or then they run. And it's still, they picked up, listen, I know Deshaun Watson is going through a lot of stuff right now, so that's the draft process for him. Like the process with him, the same thing. Like this dude won a national championship, right? Deshaun Watson, right? Won the national championship against Alabama, and was in a dogfight the year before with Alabama in the national championship. And they're picking apart. Yet somehow this guy from North Carolina, Mitchell Trubisky, comes out of nowhere, and suddenly he's skyrocketing, and he's the number 2 pick in the draft. That makes zero sense to me. And guess what? It panned out that way. Look at it. Trubisky signed a 1-year deal for $2 million to be a backup in Buffalo. To be a backup, right? Lamar Jackson's an MVP. Deshaun Watson is an MVP caliber player, right? So, and I couldn't believe, like, it's just like we just try to find in the process, like Trubisky thing. He was a 1-year starter. It wasn't like he was like he didn't lead UNC to the ACC championship or whatever national championship. It's suddenly because he's the he just fits the mold. Yeah, he fits the mold, and you're not taking much of a chance, and you take him it just, and Patrick Mahomes too. Like they were like, well, he's a gunslinger. He's gonna stick. He's gonna wait, right? He's gonna wait. He's gonna throw it to his first guy. He's gonna crap. Oh no! Why would you take a chance on him? Can't throw in the pocket. His mechanics are awful. Oh, how can you? He can't get better. Well, guess what?
Now look at him. Now the best quarterback in the league.
He's worth $500 million.
Yeah.
It just feels like, and listen, and I know Haskins, right? Everyone's gonna bring up Haskins, and they're gonna be like, well, look, and they're gonna see like, look, he didn't work out. He got cut and all that. But how many times we've seen, quarterbacks or white quarterbacks keep getting chances, and yet Haskins, yes, I know there's maturity issues, but he was just crucified. Like, oh, he should never get a chance and all that. And it's just like, I think people look at Jamarcus Russell, all these guys, RG3, and feel like, they don't want to take that chance. And I really think that's a real thing. And that's why we're seeing Mac Jones suddenly coming out of nowhere. Like, listen, he had a great year. There's no, and I think he's better than what people think, right? I think he is.
Oh, Jones had a terrific year.
But I think he's safe. And for some reason, they look at Justin Fields and they're hearing all these false narratives about Justin Fields. And they're just like, well, we've seen African-American quarterbacks, a lot of them haven't. They might even bring up the Deshaun Watson stuff now. We'll see. Like, it's just stuff like that. I think it's really
You're
real.
Not wrong.
It's really real. And I think that's why we're seeing Mac Jones. He's clean cut. It's like with Daniel Jones with the Giants. I don't get why he was the pick. I don't get why he was a top 10 pick. Doesn't make sense. But he's clean cut. He's safe. They took him. And we're still figuring out if he's the guy. I just think it's still a reality that race to some extent is still a factor with the quarterbacks,
Well,
they always go here. Like, that's my thing. Is always, when they come to attacking black quarterbacks, it's does he process? Is he more than just a first? It's always here, and that's what guys in the past have said, and they've tried to shy away from it a little bit or not make it so blatant. But it's always here. Like, we talk about Justin Fields, we talk about Dwayne Haskins, we talk about Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson. Who else? We could even go to Dak Prescott, but he was a 4th-round pick. We talk about Russell Wilson, and it's here. Like, they don't progress. They don't have the greatest reads. They take longer to progress. They're probably going to take a while to learn the system. This system might be too complicated for them. Everything is here, but then you look at some of the biggest busts of all times, and they were white quarterbacks. We could talk about Jamarcus Russell, but we also have Ryan Leaf, who's arguably, this guy got picked ahead of Peyton Manning. Like, this guy right here was a guy who got picked ahead of arguably the greatest.
He wasn't ahead of him.
He was number 2.
Oh, he was right, but he was in the same breath. I apologize. He was in the same breath as Peyton Manning. That's crazy. But we don't attack. Like, we leave guys alone. Johnny Manziel becomes alcoholic, and he gets talked about for a little bit. We leave him alone. Like, everybody, Big Ben makes his mistakes. We talk about it, we leave him alone. Tim Tebow has one playoff game. We talk about it, we leave him alone. But then they attack Justin Fields. They're attacking Justin Fields.
So they say the other day about Mac Jones, they're like, yeah, he doesn't, have the athletic ability and all that, which is kind of important in sports. But hey, from the neck up, and I'm like, are you
from the neck up? But it's also
like it's so blatant
in high school. Look at how they go to 24/7 sports. Go to the quarterbacks. It's designated pro style quarterbacks. And then athlete quarterbacks, right? And then you look at the quarterbacks who are athletes, and then look at the pro style quarterbacks. Just
the
to
dual
do that.
threat,
the dual threat
as opposed to pro style.
I'm just saying, look at that, and you'll be like, it's crazy.
I want to welcome Stuart Brooking to the show, and Steven's going to come in here in just a second. Also, Stuart Brooking from the Morning Brew with Stu. Stuart, how are you today? You couldn't help it, could you?
No, dude. I once I heard that we got to the Reed part, that's where I needed to chime in, because this idea that the Justin Fields can't get to read 2, 3, or 4 is, in my opinion, the most asinine statement I've ever heard in my life. Like, I mean, let's look at it. Like, Fields on multiple occasions, the Clemson game, even the Indiana game where he struggled, had gotten to his 4th read on multiple occasions, and he's clearly QB2 in this draft class, in my opinion.
Yeah, I still think he is. By the way, I still think he's going the second quarterback.
It shouldn't be close.
It's not even in the
we shouldn't be discussing, because my thing is, it's been Lawrence and Fields the whole time. Now all of a sudden the season's over. He made a couple, and if you look at the Indiana game, he didn't have a bad game. He had a couple bad plays, but
and
you look at his game, he steamrolled Indiana. We were up 42-21 and win 42-35. But everybody got lackadaisical in that game. He only had a couple bad plays. That's it.
What Mac Jones didn't do last year? Play. So of course he doesn't have bad tape last year. He didn't play.
Same thing with Zach Wilson. No one heard about Zach Wilson last year until this year.
Lance is making money by not playing. He's making millions by not playing last year. And I totally agreed with his decision.
Why are we not killing? My thing is with Fields, we're killing him and we're picking apart. Okay, Zach Wilson went to BYU. But Zach Wilson went to BYU. We get it. We don't expect nothing great out of BYU. But for him to be such this great quarterback, he had one chance to showcase his talent on national television. He folded. He choked. He played terrible against Coastal Carolina. That was a nationally televised game between 2 ranked teams. Zach Wilson's opportunity to show us what he's really made of against the best team he's going to play all year. He folded. He played horrible. He played absolutely horrible, and we're still saying. And then we go. I hate pro days, by the way. Like I am for quarterbacks. I hate pro days because I hate all that. I hate the 40-yard dash. I hate everything. I hate the combine. And the reason why is because we're measuring guys and what they do in gym shorts and no shirt or tank tops, when it's totally different when you put pads in a helmet, and it's different. I hate pro days. I hate combines. I like measuring. Okay, you can measure the guy's strength and he jumps high, but everything changes when pads come on. I hate the combine and pro days. And we're literally looking at Zach Wilson making one crazy throw in some shorts. Yes, could we have made that throw? No, but we're nowhere near NFL talent quarterbacks.
Wilson's an NFL
Everybody in that, all 5 of those guys could have made that same throw that Zach Wilson made in pro day. First off, Justin Fields, I think he made a point to do it because he did his little rollout, turned his body and slung it down the field. I think he made it a point because that's what everybody was impressed with Zach Wilson. So that's my thing is you look at a pro day, and Trey Lance had a great pro day. Oh my God, he's the QB2. Then Zach Wilson's pro day came. Oh my God, he's QB2. Then Justin Fields comes, and it's like, oh man, maybe we should stop the slander. And then boom, oh, he doesn't work hard. That's what comes next. Oh, he doesn't work hard.
Yeah. So for me, here's the thing. For me, I look at it like this, and I'll give you a little of a preview. I'm having an emergency podcast today based off of what I heard last night. I was on my way home from work, and I was listening to the radio, and they had the first draft pod with Mel Kiper and Todd McShay, and the host asked them, in this draft class, where would Sam Darnold fit? And Todd McShay said he would be the second quarterback in the draft. But where do they have Zach Wilson mocked?
Yeah,
taking over for the second quarterback in the draft. So. Emergency podcast tonight because I got a lot to say, but yeah.
I don't blame you, man. It's the whole. It's just the basically my what I was pointing out, just the fraud of the entire system, the entire run up to the draft. Like Mo, you talked about. I understand what pro days, especially for quarterback, I think they're useless. I don't mind interviews. Interview a guy, talk to him. Talk to everybody around.
Watch the film. I understand that.
Yeah, and if you want it, so now you can take Justin Fields, if you do want to measure his athleticism, okay, he validated what we saw on tape with a 4.4 if we want him to run it, but it almost works against him. And then, linebackers and stuff like that, he has a 40-inch vertical, Baron Browning. Let's go back and look at the tape and see why that doesn't translate. I understand some of that. I'm with you. I don't put a lot of stock into it. But my whole problem with it is that these talking heads, is what we do. They do what we do, They discuss this stuff.
Yeah.
They create their own content, and then they'll get across the desk from each other and argue about it. But I'm like, Nobody said it. You guys said it.
Jeff, that's what it is. It's to create content. It's like you said, negative news creates stories, right? Controversy creates cash. That's that's an old saying, like, so they have to create storylines. It's what the business is. It's creating these narratives so we could have something to talk about on ESPN or Fox Sports. So to me, this is all just people just making stories up so we can create storylines going into the draft, because that's what the draft is about. It's creating storyline. Oh, Justin Fields, he's not that smart.
And now outside of the NFL, because once again, I stand by that the NFL does their homework and that he'll still be the second quarterback. And then that gives him more content, by the way. I brought this up in my story. Then when he gets picked second, everybody will go, whoa, exactly, we really thought Wilson was going there.
And you fell for it. You fell for the smoke screen.
They'll say stuff like, oh, man, everything's out the window now, blah, blah, blah. And then I'll address another thing that people have brought up a lot. And then we'll get to, Steven's muted right now, but he'll be on. I'll get to another thing that they keep addressing. So now it's this is actually good for Fields because he's going to fall to a better team. Okay, falling to a better team is two different things. I looked at it last year, number 1 pick, Joe Burrow. Contract, $36 million. The third quarterback taken, Justin Herbert at number 6, $26 million. 5 spots, $10 million difference. So yeah, it might be better for his career to go to the Patriots in 20 years or whatever. But like, if I'm trying to get paid, $10 million is not, I'm better off. Let me take the $30 or $40 million, and I'll worry about my team. Like, I'm sure Trevor Lawrence isn't like, hey, I'd rather go 22nd to,
No, he wants to go number 1.
This is also what I hate. This is also what I hate about the NFL draft is, first off, I love the draft, don't get me wrong. But what I hate is the quarterbacks, and it's mainly the quarterbacks more so than anybody suffer. For sure. Because they go to these bad teams and they're expected to be the franchise saviors. And when they can't do it by themselves, they're bust. They're done. When really we know the talent is there. If Trevor Lawrence isn't a guy who takes Jacksonville to the Super Bowl, does that mean he's bad? If he can't get over the fact the front office can't bring talent around him, does that make him a bad guy because he can't go to the best of the best and carry a team in the ultimate team sport by himself? No, but that's the weight of the shoulders that this year these 5 quarterbacks put on. Is outside of San Francisco, most of the teams, and San Francisco is only here, obviously, for trading up, and then they were only a bad team last year due to a lot of injuries. Outside of San Francisco, the Jets, the Jags, possibly the Panthers, those teams are bad. They're bad teams, and you're going to come and expect to save them off a rookie year, and then you look at some of the successful guys. You got Tom Brady, you got Aaron Rodgers. They didn't have to come in day one and be the starter, and expectations were Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes, there's so many guys, not so many, but there's guys.
Voice was Stephen Gillespie from Breaking the Game podcast, everyone.
Yeah, there's so many guys.
I'm trying to wait my turn.
No, you're doing good.
Go ahead, Stephen.
No. I didn't mean that in a bad way at all.
No, but my thing is there's so many guys that we hold so much weight to save the franchise, and then when they can't do it because they have to go to such a bad team. That's why I understand the money situation, but I would, if Justin Fields does fall, that is a chance for him to be on a better team.
I tell you what, Patriots are a year away from being one of the worst rosters in the league. It's going to be a mess when these contracts start.
They're already.
They're a dumpster fire. I would not want to go to the Patriots.
I don't know about a dumpster fire. Nope.
I want to go back to something that Mo talked about in San Francisco, because when San Francisco first made that trade, I made a tweet out saying, it's Justin Fields, because everybody
there. I still think
everybody's reporting that it's going to be Lawrence and Wilson. If that's the case, I don't think it should be, but if that's the case, then Justin Fields, to me, the perfect spot is San Francisco. Then the reports came out from people who are, best friends with Kyle Shanahan, people who are close with the organization, saying that they wanted Mac Jones. One of two things, and I said this on my podcast. I don't know how many of you listened, but I said this on the podcast,
brother,
that the 49ers are either saying, listen, we've seen all we need to see from Justin Fields to know that he's the guy. So we're going to see Mac Jones to make sure that, we're not missing anything, make sure we're crossing all of our T's, dotting all of our I's.
Due diligence, of course.
Or they're actually insane and they're going to go with Mac Jones over Justin Fields. Because
I don't believe that.
The thing that keeps getting brought up is this, well, look how much success that Kyle Shanahan had with Matt Schaub.
I heard that point on your show, Stu. I heard that point on your show, and if you're jumping up to number 3 because you want Matt Schaub on your team, then that goes back to the point that you just pointed out.
You're insane.
You're insane. Like,
that's my point.
Is Matt Schaub a bad quarterback? No. Is he a great quarterback? No. You don't jump up. You don't trade up to number 3 to get an okay quarterback. You don't do that.
What do I say a lot when I talk about,
you don't do that.
quarterbacks? What do I say a lot? I say yards don't win games. Everyone talks about Matt Schaub and how he led the league in passing.
Yeah, but sometimes
but he didn't win anything.
You're crazy for that.
He threw for 4,000 yards.
Yeah,
who cares?
You don't draft an average quarterback at 3. I'm sorry. You don't
trade up to get Matt Schaub.
You don't want to. You're not moving up to 3 to be like, you know what? I want a safe quarterback who's going to run the West Coast offense the way I want it because I had Kirk Cousins and Matt Schaub.
You don't do it to draft Jimmy G.
You don't do that.
Like, you don't do that. Move to 3 to draft a younger Jimmy G. You don't. That makes no sense.
I know you're not into pro days, but pro days is the place where like you're supposed to show off your talent and how good you are, right? And you have no defense, no DBs. Do you know how many passes Mac Jones overthrew? Like, his pro day was awful. Like, out of all the quarterbacks I've seen, he overthrew receivers on the deep ball. He was bad. He reminded me a lot. I mean, maybe he was trying to over-try because, there are reports going around that he doesn't have great arm strength. So maybe he was just trying to throw it down there, see how far he can get.
I think that was
wait. Overthrew receivers several times with no defense.
Hey, real quick, one of the super analysts from one of the 4-letter networks, not OTBN, said, "Oh yeah, they were good overthrows though because it showed his arm strength." I'm like, I don't know what to do with it.
DeMarcus Russell has some pretty good overthrows.
Okay, so Steven, you haven't had much a chance to talk.
Go ahead. I want to hear what Steven.
We'll get back to the subject. How do you feel about? I'll just call it at this point the draft, pre-draft circus going up to it. The Justin Fields slander, the McAfee, Orlovsky ridiculousness, all that.
So I want to start off by saying that there has been a lot of Justin Fields slander. And I'm not with it. Jeff, I even was on or commented on your Ohio State show a couple times, and I flat out said, like, Fields might be have the best career out of any dude taken out of this draft. Like, I wholeheartedly feel that way. And Stuart, I know how you feel about Trevor Lawrence, and I'm not knocking him by saying that I think Fields might have the best career. I also think that Lawrence is going to be pretty good. I just think that when it comes down to at the end of the day, when the dust settles and they both hang up their cleats, I think there's a strong possibility that Fields might outdo him in the pros. That's all I'm saying. And with that being said, when it comes to what I saw from Dan Orlovsky, I haven't seen what Pat McAfee said. I'm not a big fan of Pat, by the way. So
I'm not anymore.
I never really have.
Sorry, Jurg.
I know Jurg's a big for the brand guy. I know he's a big Pat McAfee guy, but it just seems like he tries too hard to be it. You know what I mean? It's not like his level of knowledge, sure. Like, he's a former pro athlete and he's privy to how things work, and he has great relationships and stuff like that. That's a big part of being a great, network analyst. But you shouldn't have to make a sideshow of yourself to get people to want to watch you. Yeah, and
he's an entertainer. That's it. He's an entertainer. He is entertaining.
That's fine.
But
that's just not my cup of tea.
Right.
That's not my cup of tea.
Here's a point.
But his show is more entertainment than
and
informational
content. Informational. It's just entertaining. We cover. He doesn't. I heard from. For the most part, he covers his source. He heard it from ESPN, makes a show of it the next day, and he just kind of gives his thoughts, his crazy style. But you gotta like we do the same job, guys, and any one of us, if we do it all the time. Somebody, like, especially at Cruise, man, if somebody says something, or Stu,
we may not tell them they're wrong, but we don't just go,
not on their show.
You're right, man. Like, I totally like McAfee has to say, wait a minute, if you're not going to tell me who the source is, the next thing he says can't be, last guy in, first guy out. He can't jump to that. He can't jump to, oh, it had to have come out of the Ohio State program. You can't jump to that when
not when people tune into you. And granted, you are an entertainer, but people also will watch an entertainer specifically for information, and that's where I kind of don't like the entertainment aspect of being an analyst, because regardless of how entertaining you are going to be someone's source of knowledge for the sport or whatever it is that you cover. And they're going to say Pat McAfee said this, so therefore I think it.
But he's going to cater to his audience, though. Like, he has that base that he's just going to
correct
to what they are.
And I get that, but I'm just saying, like, when he puts out something, people are going to believe it because he's Pat McAfee.
Exactly.
Like, although he is, like you guys said, he's an entertainer, they're going to hold on to what he says as gospel.
Yep.
Because he's on TV, he must know what he's talking about, right? So, and when I saw what Dan Orlovsky put out yesterday, I didn't like it at first when he first got going. But as I watched through, I forced myself to watch through because I'm not a big Dan guy either. But I listened to what he said. As it progressed, to me, it felt like he was addressing that there are things going on in Fields, not in Fields' camp, but, how people are assessing Fields in his camp. And it felt like Orlovsky was putting that out and also saying, hey, look, I have sources that are saying otherwise to what you guys are hearing right now. There are sources saying that he's a great locker room guy. He's a great leader. So he's a great stay on the field guy. He's a great mind. He does read passes. Like, that's what I got out of it.
Right. And here's my follow-up. He did do that. First of all, he's the one that said it and then had to talk about him saying it. That was a big problem.
Yes, and I agree with you on
here's
that.
Another problem, though. If that's all true that he said on his little video yesterday, why doesn't he open the Pat McAfee show with that? That's what I'm asking.
Because
I haven't seen the whole thing. That's just the snippet that I saw. I haven't seen the whole show.
He explained why he, I think this morning or so, he explained why he doubled back. So when he said what he said on the McAfee show, that was the first thing he heard. And then he did his diving, and that's what he was hearing.
You do it first, though.
So he did. So
no, he did that so people would be on this show right now talking about it. That's
but
it.
Then when he came out and said, I did more. I talked to, an Ohio State offensive coach. Didn't say, because he was like, once I put out that statement and seen the backlash it was getting, I did even more digging. Talked to some people who really are close to him. The guy who's been training him up until the point of his pro day, and then an Ohio State offensive coach didn't put a name on it. And he said that man, the type of work that he puts in is he's here. He's the leader of the team. He is the captain. But then when we're done with drills, he's staying to get in more work. He's like, and you could refer to the players, the Chris Olaves, the Garrett Wilsons, because there were times where like they wanted to leave and Justin Fields was so addicted to working that it's like, no, we're gonna go. But maybe it was because his motivation was a national championship at the time.
To me, it sounds like what Dan did. It sounds like what Dan did was put out something like he didn't know at first, and he didn't say, well, maybe I did put out the wrong information. Let me go on my own behalf and research this more. It sounds like he said something kind of sideways, and Ohio State camp called him. Like he didn't have to do much digging.
All on purpose. Yeah. Orlovsky knew when he said that, Orlovsky knew exactly what McAfee would do and that he would run with it and that it would make Twitter. And they don't care if it's negative or because there are no consequences for these guys.
There's really not.
Nobody's going to remember the day after the draft anything that Orlovsky said or care. It is
because he's an entertainer. Yes. Now he's an entertainer. He's not informational. So there's more ambiguity. There's more leeway in what you can say because you can fall back and say, oh, it's just entertainment. Like Dan's not the foremost authority.
He wouldn't have said that.
Exactly.
Dan wouldn't have said that on ESPN because it did surprise me that he threw that out there on the McAfee show.
Yeah, but now he gets to go on ESPN and defend it. He created.
But I'm saying up until he threw that out there on ESPN, and just specifically that network, there's been two guys who have come to Justin Fields' defense and have basically said he's QB2 for when people say certain things like he can't read after his first read, stop talking to him.
It's insane.
Dan Orlovsky and Ryan Clark have been the two guys that have literally been trying to convince everybody else that they are insane for thinking that Justin Fields should even justifiably be the fifth quarterback taken, let alone Zach Wilson. Like the argument is Zach Wilson shouldn't even be taking over Justin Fields, let alone Trey Lance, because we're talking
Trey
about
Lance doesn't belong in that conversation
Trey Lance and
at
Justin
all.
Fields to me are the same type of quarterback, but Justin Fields is better. He's more elite. He's played on a more elite level and for longer. Trey Lance just sat out a year. His stats, he didn't throw an interception. That's cool. Justin Fields barely threw an interception. He had 79 touchdowns.
Fields had last season in the shortened season off of COVID. It was his worst season. He had maybe 2 games that were not typical Justin Fields games. He had average games in 2 games. Other than that, he had a great season.
2 games in his career.
Yeah, hold on.
In his career, and it just so happened to be the most recent COVID-ridden shortened season.
None of that matters because what Orlovsky's talking about is in the head, is in the brain. It has nothing to do with on the field. He didn't say if he brings up mechanics, if he brings up footwork. I don't care if he brings up. I don't care what he brings up on the field that we can visibly check with our own eyes.
Yeah.
I have no way. I cannot call Ryan Day right now and ask him if Justin Fields is a good practice quarterback. But you can throw that shit out there, and there's no defense of it whatsoever. And then
you can watch the
so we'll get 3 shows today talking about this, and here's something that's really, really, really important.
He'll be on NFL radio on Sirius XM.
Yep, and Justin Fields does not make one dime off of it.
And he doesn't make a comment either. Like, he just sits back. Fields hasn't done anything. Like, my thing is,
which is really out of character for a guy with character issues to not say something back, right? Like, that doesn't line up.
Here's what I have to say. I watched the entire, because I'm a big Pat McAfee guy, so I watched the entire Dan Orlovsky segment. I'm going to be honest. I only like Dan Orlovsky when he talks about Carson Wentz, because now Wentz is my QB, just saying. But that's a different topic for a different time. But what I'm saying is this.
The veil of fandom.
He did talk about, after he said what he said, obviously, he did talk about some other issues that Fields had, and he did talk about mechanics, Jeff. And he don't
have any mechanic issues.
And here's the thing: he talked about how like Fields' arm is kind of like this when he throws, but my whole thing is like it's effective
at a certain point where the picture was taken.
And I don't know what you guys know about the Elite 11, or if you guys even know what the Elite 11 camp is.
Oh, yeah.
It's this, they take like 20 or 30 of the best quarterbacks in the country. They put them in this big camp, and they compete for the top 11 spots. Mm-hmm. Do you know who beat Trevor Lawrence in the Elite 11 camp?
Justin Fields.
Okay. So does that mean that?
Don't say that.
Listen, Justin Fields
don't say that.
But it was like he was better. He was almost considered better than Trevor Lawrence coming out of high school. They were literally 1A and 1B. And it was equivalent. For as many people as you had saying Trevor Lawrence was 1 and Fields was 2, you had just as many people saying Fields was 1 and Lawrence was 2.
Once again,
a lot of that QB1 came out too. As far as coming out of high school, well, they were 1A and 1B, and there were a lot of people that had
none of it.
And how they split it was Justin Fields was the number 1 dual threat.
See, here's the thing though. Here's what
I think Lawrence was consensus number 1 though.
That's fine.
But Fields was number 2, consensus number 2.
Yeah, absolutely. But here's the problem. None of this is about that. It's all about they start the character issue stuff, and they start the questions about. They start these random questions. There's nothing to do with Justin Fields. None of it is about on the field. None of it's about on the field.
Every criticism that you can make for Fields, arguably you can make the same criticism. All right, so how about this? The same criticisms that you can make for Mac Jones. Some of those apply to Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
Trevor Lawrence doesn't get hit when he plays quarterback for Clemson because of their crews that they get. Trevor Lawrence is surrounded by top-tier talent on every area of the offensive side of the ball. That's the same knocks that you hear about Mac Jones. You can't adequately assess Mac Jones because of all the weapons that he has around him, and he doesn't get hit.
Oh, guess who you're talking about?
The same things in that regard only, Stu. In that regard only. You can apply towards Trevor Lawrence.
Hey, all those guys are surrounded by talent. They're at the best schools in America. Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones. They're surrounded by talent because they're at the 3 of the best premier schools in America. Like, I do get that you say, well, okay, they've had talent. Look at all the past Ohio State quarterbaks.
That's stupid,
outside of Dwayne Haskins,
that is
who
stupid.
we did. And my thing is, outside of Dwayne Haskins, who we thought was different from everybody else.
It doesn't matter. Dwayne Haskins played for Urban. None of that, like the whole Ohio State thing, doesn't matter either. Anybody?
No, but they bring it up. They do bring it up because it's like, typical Ohio State quarterback. But there was when we talk about NFL talent and first round guys.
I got heated on that not too long ago.
And it's Dwayne Haskins, Dwayne Haskins was an NFL first-round talent guy. That he was different than Terrell Pryor, JT Barrett, and
I would compare Dwayne Haskins to Mac Jones. I would say that's probably a close.
But then Justin Fields, he's different than any quarterback we've ever had, because I'll say with Terrell Pryor, he had the arm strength and the athleticism. He didn't have the accuracy. With Braxton Miller, he had the athleticism, he had the elusiveness, he had the arm. He just wasn't the most accurate. You look at Justin Fields, he has it all. He can make every throw.
He's
on
a
the
pro
field,
quarterback,
and he can run. He's a true NFL quarterback. He can make any throw you need him to make. But now all of a sudden, he's the 5th best quarterback. What? Because we're picking apart 2 games and then creating these narratives that Zach Wilson is
ignoring his entire collegiate history, by the way.
Yeah, we don't even nobody even talks about any other games when they break down why he should be the 5th quarterback taken, except for Indiana and Northwestern. They don't even, when guys who are pro Justin Fields and believe in Fields bring up, well, okay, look at Clemson this year. Look at Clemson last year.
Or every game he's ever played. Look at every game he's played.
Outside of those 2 games.
He's the best player in every game he's ever played. He's the absolute best player in every game he's ever played. And I don't care about Devontae Smith. Nobody's taking Devontae Smith, a 165-pound wide receiver, over Justin Fields. Justin Fields is the best player in every game he's ever played, including Trevor Lawrence on those 2 games.
I want to go back to what Steven said real quick with the Mac Jones and Trevor Lawrence thing. Again, we're not going to get on this topic. I'm just bringing it up as an example. The thing that I keep harping on with Jameis was this every year is supposed to be a breakout year thing. What did we hear in college? Every year we were expecting Trevor Lawrence to take that, humongous leap to where he wins the Heisman. And every year he's improved. I'm not saying he hasn't improved. Don't get me wrong. And I clearly think he's the number 1 overall pick. But
yeah, anyone listening who doubts Stewart's affinity for Trevor Lawrence, you're mistaken, because Stewart loves Trevor Lawrence.
I think Trevor's never
hates running backs,
but Trevor has never taken that leap that everyone expected. He's improved in small increments of his game, but where have we seen Trevor fail? Where have we seen him fail? The biggest games when they count. Sure, he won his freshman year. Sure, his freshman year he beat Alabama and he did all that. But what did he do versus LSU? He stunk up the joint. What did he do versus Ohio State? He kind of stunk up the joint. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Outside of that 70-something yard run he had, he really didn't play that great. Like, in all honesty,
I kept waiting for him to take over. Like, this is where we need to see Trevor. This is where guys who I felt Andrew Luck would have taken over. Guys who, like Peyton Manning in college, would have taken over to show you what kind of dog they are, right? Like you got to have that dog in you. And Lawrence didn't have it in any of those, the LSU game or the Ohio State game. He failed to live up to what
with some of the best offensive talent in the nation on his team.
The best, maybe arguably, depending on who you ask. Depending on who you ask, maybe the best running back in this draft.
Yeah. So I mean, there it is. It's the whole point of this.
I love Trevor Lawrence.
The false narratives, the circus that gets created along the way for these kids that they have nothing to do with. They don't make any money off of it. I personally don't believe. I refuse to believe the NFL execs give 2 shits what Dan Orlovsky says. I really don't. I don't think. No, you might be. I know some people do. I hope not, because if so,
look at what happened with Lamar Jackson with the way that he was picked apart in the draft and where he fell.
But at least with Jackson, some of it, and with these, especially these like high end, like hybrid quarterbacks that we've had come out, and we're not quite sure we know what to do with them. At least some of it's on the field stuff. Like if Fields checked every box for the quarterback they say they want. He's the size, he's the arm, and he's got 4.44 legs to go with it. First of all, I don't know how that became a negative. I looked at it. Okay, first round pick, Baker Mayfield. First pick, Baker Mayfield.
I'm going to plug my ears. I don't want to get going.
No. This is just saying that you got first pick, Baker Mayfield. My first pick was Kyler Murray. First pick, Joe Burrow. He's not a athletic freak. He had a great year and he deserves it. But my point is, you can't say that those guys are the first pick in the draft and then look at a talent like Justin Fields and say he's a 5th quarterback in his year. How can anybody justify that?
Okay, this Trey Lance
Fields was better than all those dudes in college.
I disagree with it, but I can kind of live with the fact of, if you say Zach Wilson's better, I don't have to agree with you, but it is what it is, and I can live with it.
I'm with you on that, Stu. Like, I get the point that people are going to prefer.
As long as it's on the field stuff.
But this idea that a guy who hasn't played in a year, who plays a Division I 2A, no offense to Division I 2A players, and who in his last game that he played in, where he was supposed to showcase his talents, had more rushing yards than he did passing yards.
Thank you.
The fact that this guy who has the biggest question marks out of the top 5 quarterbacks, Trey Lance, is above Justin Fields is insane to me, because the question becomes at what point, because for me it becomes at what point do you look at the fact that you have to go back to 2 years to watch what he did, and then it's not okay. I would understand if he played like James Madison, who's right up there with North Dakota State in the Division I 2A,
or Clemson. Imagine if he played Clemson in the playoffs.
I know
that would be awesome.
You know, like in the Division I 2A, it's like
or UCF,
North Dakota State and James Madison. They usually always compete in the national championship. So I can understand he played like some Northwest Mountain State of Missouri, Anaheim, or something like that. It didn't matter, and he had more rushing yards than he did passing yards. That's the point that bothers me with this whole Trey Lance stuff. Is you probably brought out a D2 school, and you couldn't even like perform against them. That's the problem I have.
And what kills me about what you're saying, Stu, is the fact that we have a mountain of evidence supporting Justin Fields.
Yeah.
And we want to focus on the 2 little cracks in this mountain. Whereas for Trey Lance,
we're making up cracks.
Well, so however you want to slice that, that's up to you. But for Trey Lance, we have an anthill of evidence, and we want to make a mountain out of this anthill, force him up past Justin Fields. And it blows my mind that we want to nitpick the tiny little bit of things supposedly, reportedly, Fields can or cannot do, and we want to nitpick that to death. But the one kind of cool thing that Trey Lance can do, we want to overblow that and make that bigger of a deal than the flaws that Fields doesn't have in his game.
Real quick, I want to respond to that real quick. I was a guy who, and Jeff, you know this because we talked about it, and I released a quarterback ranking after the Northwestern game with Ohio State, and I had Zach Wilson at 2, and I had Justin Fields
on the field.
And I had Justin Fields at 3. But what I said, and I've had Jeff on to talk about
it. Spiders.
And what I've said
spiders.
What I've said since then is everything that I've brought up with Justin Fields has been on the play. It's been, it's been on the field. It's been, I did question at first his decision making. The IU game was awful. I did question some of the things. But here's the thing.
But the whole game was awful, by the way.
But IU game was not awful.
Okay, hang on a second. Everything that Justin Fields has that I see as a, as a teak in his armor can be coached. It's all coachable. It's not like it's end of the world stuff that like you.
And it's not consistent.
Yeah, and it's not consistent. It's not like he's doing it every day. He had 2 bad games in his entire career. His entire career, 2 bad games. Who cares? That's when ever since that Clemson game,
I think we should
clarify,
my QB too. Just in case somebody's not a college football fan or a Ohio State fan or, just got here from the moon, the worst games that he ever played, I think we failed to mention he won. I think that is important.
Yeah.
We're talking about his worst games were victories, by the way. But the last thing I'll say about Fields is the whole point of it is they found a target, the perfect target this year, these NFL draft so-called gurus.
Your article on this was phenomenal.
Thank you very much. And I'm
really
glad it couldn't have been a more coincidence. I saw this coming, but I didn't know that it was going to like explode this week. So worked out for me, but that's my whole point. And next year it'll be a different guy was my point of the article. And it'll probably be Spencer Rattler. More than likely next year coming out will be Spencer Rattler.
Or no, Sam Howell is going to get picked apart.
It could be Howell. It'll just depend. They'll decide when it gets there. They
I'm
know.
going with you, Jeff. It'll be Spencer.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I mean,
my knocks on Spencer will all be play wise. I mean, he did get benched twice this year.
Well, yeah, that's the whole point of it is.
Yeah, I know the whole point's that they're going to insult his intelligence, or they're going to find a way to say he doesn't work hard.
It just like Baker Mayfield, they were like, is he immature? So now
he ran from a cop.
Let's talk about that for 20 days rather than like really like talk about how they are in the field. That's my whole point of this is that.
And I just want to point out too that I said this kind of tongue in cheek, but the more I say it, the more I believe it. I believe that Kellen Mond is going to be better than Mac Jones.
Oh wow, I like it. Well, yeah, I heard Mac Jones doesn't believe in Santa Claus. I don't That's what I can't tell you who told me. It's 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 a anonymous.
You're gonna get a call from his people, and that's gonna be your digging.
Yeah. I'm not saying that it's true. I'm just saying I heard he doesn't believe in Santa Claus.
Well, sources tell me that he's going to be this generation's Matt Leinart, and I am sources. So
my source. So real quick, I would thank you guys for going. It's a busy show. I want to kind of go around the horn real quick and get some wrap up thoughts on this. So Chris LeBron, we kind of shut you down for a while. The president, you didn't.
Man with the plan.
I don't think you were patient with us. You were patient with me. So I want to get just your final thoughts on the draft process. And just whatever you want to say, man.
Yeah, I just think you're gonna hear a lot of smoke screen stuff. So I think don't always believe what everyone says. It's all about trying to get a guy to drop, creating narratives. So you can pick this guy at a spot here, get him at pay him less so you can get. It's all narrative. So like when you hear all this stuff, it's just nonsense. So I wouldn't go full bore on it because. It's just draft season, so you're going to get a whole lot of stuff. Like I mentioned before, they did this with LaMelo Ball. He's not a hard worker, blah, blah, blah. I mean, before the injury, he was the rookie of the year. I mean, you're not the rookie of the year if you're not putting in the work. And all his teammates love him. And, he's going to create a possible destination for free agents for years to come. So it's just all a lot of crap that we're going to hear a lot. We're going to hear a lot of stuff that we just – nonsense. So I think that's the thing when we hear the drafts is, they create shows like this. We're talking about it. So
absolutely. I fell for the bait. I totally admit it.
It's a lot of let's create stuff for television, because if you can't go to the draft, everyone being, well, Justin Fields is good and that's it. You got to create stories, So this is always happens. We're always going to get this every year. It's a new quarterback that, Lamar Jackson with Patrick Mahomes. We're going to get it happens Teddy Bridgewater. It happened with Teddy Bridgewater. He had a crappy pro day. People are like, oh, no, forget about the tape. His pro day sucks, so he's not good. And, so it's just, stories. It's all storytelling and all that. So, they want to fall for the bait and all that. So that's what it is. It's just all about making stories. So
the only problem with it is that it goes away and these I won't even call them analysts. These knuckleheads, they don't care.
Entertainers.
But the fact is, a year from now, if Justin Fields is struggling or hits the rookie wall, or 2 years from now, whatever, they'll go, or say he gets a traffic violation or something, just something, a chink in the armor. They'll go, well, before the draft, they did say there were some character issues. That's what this turns into.
He smoked marijuana. Oh my goodness! That's how this works. And but Orlovsky's already going to be on to the next victim. Like that's the whole problem with it, is that it will follow these guys, especially black quarterbacks. We talked about that. They can never work their way out of it. Like it's just the way it is. That's why I wrote the story about black quarterbacks at the beginning of the NFL season. Mm-hmm. There is a difference. And that they carry this extra weight with them, and that everybody, like not everybody, but a huge chunk of especially NFL fans are just like, I can't wait. Like I can't wait to pounce. I can't wait to and it has nothing. But then look at the best NFL quarterbacks in the league.
I know we talked about that. That's the problem. But like right now, a quick example. This will be a whole show. I'll just say it and then we'll move on. But a perfect example is right now, Mahomes has, maybe his worst day as a pro in the Super Bowl. Things don't go great. So immediately they're like, well, if he can't use his feet, have they figured him out? Like nobody ever figured out Tom Brady. Nobody ever figured out like Jim Kelly when he lost 4 Super Bowls in a row. They were just like, I'll get him next year. Mahomes, it's like, maybe they figured him out. Like, they throw out scrambling words and defenses and all that. And then you're like, well, here we go. So I'm just putting that out there that this stuff isn't as innocuous as dudes like, McAfee and Orlovsky think they are. That's my point in this whole thing. So we'll move on from there. So Mo, Up in Flames podcast. Thanks for coming on, man. Just quick wrap up thoughts on this. Any advice for the audience besides offtheballnetwork.com?
Yeah. Obviously go to offtheballnetwork.com, but it's like my thing is if you're a casual fan and you listen to what you hear on ESPN and Fox and wherever you get your sources from, I like for you to not develop an opinion based off. My thing is, don't develop an opinion based off of another man. Listen to what they have to say and think about what they say when you go read it yourself, when you go look at it yourself. You know, when you're in class, you do research on a topic. The topic is broad. Your teacher teaches you the basis, but you want to know more, you do research. So my thing is, I understand casual fans are not going to go rewatch games and stuff. But a lot of people, especially on podcast platforms, before you try and take these narratives of guys like Dan Orlovsky and you hold so much weight because of what they did in the NFL or they have NFL backgrounds or whatever, don't let your eyes and your mind be fooled by somebody else's eyes and mind. Because when you watch Justin Fields, he is it. He has it. He's that guy. There's certain things when he's on the field, it's just unexplainable. You don't see that with everybody. It's just like when watching Trevor Lawrence. When you watch him, you know, like, that's an NFL quarterback right there. You don't have to, you can dig in and say, you know, they've had games where you wouldn't even notice they were like 18 of 25 because it seemed like they threw 30 times. It seemed like every pass they threw was complete. So my thing is, before you develop opinion based off of even guys like us, take what we said, keep it in the back of your mind while you're watching, because that's how you gain respect for analysts, for podcasters. You listen to what they say, and then you be like, okay, it can give you a direction and vision, but your eyes and your mind do not lie to you. Don't let what these people have to say about Justin Fields specifically have you thinking that he's just some terrible quarterback. Go watch any Ohio State game and watch the Indiana and Northwestern game, and he actually won't be as bad as you thought. Even in that game, you would think he threw 10 interceptions apiece. But just go look for yourself. Do your research. Don't let everybody else develop an opinion. Have you running around here sounding ridiculous, starting to create content, talking about, oh my God, Justin Fields might be worse than Kellen Mond. Like, it's coming. Somebody's going to say it. It's going to come out. They're going to. So my thing is, just do your own research. Pay attention and don't trust what your eyes and your mind say, because use your judgment before anybody else's judgment.
Yeah, that's good advice. That's good advice. Morning Brew with Stu. What's your closing comments?
Yeah, every year I have a guy who I unintentionally or intentionally fall in love with, either like every draft year, and it may be me defending this person and seeing something that other people don't. You know, 2018 it was Luke Falk out of Washington State. I thought he could have been Kirk Cousins, taken anywhere from like 4 to 5 with the right coaches, could have been a Kirk Cousins. 2019 it was Will Grier. I still think Grier, given the right opportunity,
I liked Will Grier,
can succeed. Last year it was Jordan Love. This year, you know, I thought coming in, like, I was going to need somebody else to kind of be that late guy, and it kind of like Ian Book kind of has been that. But based off of me defending Justin Fields as much as I've defended Justin Fields, I think Fields has become now, you know, my guy. Like, I always have these my guys in every draft as far as quarterback goes, and Justin Fields has become my guy in this draft, because
that's big praise from Stu, man. That's all.
It feels like so many people are dogging on a guy who, in my opinion, is the second best quarterback in this draft class. And if you want to hear what, by the way, if you ever want to tune in to Morning Brew Stu, coming up tonight, there's an emergency podcast.
I can't wait.
It'll be out in the morning. I heard some things on my way home from work last night that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. So I have some things I want to talk about.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I recommend everybody go listen to all of these guys. Steven, closing comments.
Yeah, and just appreciate you having me on. I know I came in kind of later in the party, but I appreciate you letting me come on here and air out my thoughts and feelings.
Always welcome.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate all the other guys that are on the show letting me come on and putting up with my nonsense.
This was big time, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a good show. I mean, we got all the big heads on here. So I just want to say it's not anything in particular whether the quarterbacks are evaluated. I'm not of the mindset, and Stu and I kind of share this too, and we haven't really even talked about it, but I'm not of the mindset that the Jets have to trade back if they don't want a quarterback, because kind of the predicament they're in is that they already have a guy that they've invested in. They have holes everywhere. And if they like a guy like a Sanae Powell, you draft him second, because if you trade back, you can argue that the Falcons are taking a quarterback, but they also could take, you know, Penei Sewell. If he falls all the way to 5th, the Bengals are going to take him. So who doesn't need a quarterback? The Bengals. So, like, worst case scenario, you trade back, you're not going to have the guy you like just so someone else can jump up and grab a quarterback that they want, right? So I don't think that, and if you consider too that a lot of the people that are involved in the Jets were part of the Niners, what did they do? They built everything else first, and then they made it to where they can trade up to go get a quarterback that they like this season, and then their team theoretically is complete. So I'm not of the mindset the Jets have to trade back just so someone else can get a quarterback if they like, Sewell, then draft him. That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, that's fair. That's good advice for the Jets. They could use some.
Steven knows that he did say it, but I've been on that train for probably since the season ended and the draft started. I've been on that train.
Yeah, I don't get too wrapped up in all that because like everything changes so much, and I'm kind of with Steven. Like if that's your guy, just go get him. Worry about it later. Yeah. Like it's not a big deal. And I still think Fields is the second quarterback off the board. I don't I don't care what any of these these guys over at these other networks think or say. It's all clickbait. But more than that, I just want to say, go to offtheballnetwork.com, check out everything we're doing, everything we're writing. Everybody's got a page up there with links to their podcast. You got the Morning Brew with Stu here. You got Up in Flames. You got Off the Ball. You've got Breaking the Game, and you've got Jeff Needs Sports. And if you like comic books and stuff, head on over to Jeff Needs Help. We do some stuff over there. A lot of good stuff going on.
Falcon and Winter Soldier is out today, Jeff.
I haven't saw it yet. I'm trying to keep it.
I haven't either.
So I want to thank everybody for coming on today. This was freaking awesome. I was freaking out a little bit earlier. I'm glad we talked about this was a podcast / therapy session for me. And I think it's an important subject, and I think we covered it thoroughly, deeply. And like Mo said, go check it out yourself. Go check these guys out. Make up your own opinion. Make up your own mock drafts. Hold these guys accountable. Hold us accountable. We say something, except Cruz. That dude's wild. Like you can't validate anything that guy says on Cruise Island every Wednesday on Off the Ball Network. So
I'll go off of what Mo said earlier too. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I use my podcast and my Twitter as receipts because what I want more than anything is if I'm wrong, I want someone to screenshot a tweet or to screen record them listening to a podcast where I said something that was wrong because I want to know when I'm wrong. Because, I watch guys like Colin Cowherd who say, Baker Mayfield's Johnny Manziel, and then Baker comes on the podcast and he says, "Oh, I never said you were Johnny Manziel," when there's video and audio proof that you did. I never want to be that. So make sure when you create content, you do this stuff, that you use your content and your tweets and everything as receipts not only like back up. First of all, if you're right, to not only back up yourself, but to also like check yourself and to make sure that what you're saying is correct. That's the motto I use. I use my Twitter as a receipt thing, not only for to be like, "Ha, told you so," but to also be like, "Hey, I effed up." Yeah.
And don't be like Orlovsky and back down from your own words. If you're going to say something, stand by it.
Do any of y'all want to hop on the
give us a
emergency brew tonight?
We'll see. I don't know if I'm around tonight, but I'm sure.
If I'm around, I definitely want to hop on.
No,
right.
Cool. Yeah. All right, everybody. That was Jeff Needs Sports. That was Knee Jerk Analysis. This was offtheballnetwork.com exclusive, and we are out. Be kind, everyone.
Eli Manning's a Hall of Famer.
And don't be racist.
And Godzilla was overrated.
Uh-oh.